Hi, this is Joe and welcome back to the Fab Lab. A while back I picked up a Harbor Freight deep cut saw, and I have a Milwaukee at my other home, so I have the Harbor Freight here. So what I always like to build a stand for these deep cut saws. I like not hand holding them, I like mounting them on a stand and using them. So I come up with a design, not sure if it's going to work real well. So what we'll do is I've cut some square tube, 16th inch wall thickness, and then I've made a custom bracket to hold the saw up on the stand. So what we'll do is I'll do some tacking of the square tube, get it set up the way I want to, and then we'll do some testing to see if that's going to be sufficient to hold this saw up. If not, we'll knock the spot welds off and try something different. As I get this tacked up, I'll show you the idea that I had, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll think up something else. So let's go ahead and get the welder fired up and put some spot welds or tacks on this square tubing. Let's make sure this angle is square here. We want it to not be cockeyed when we're mounting the saw to it. So let's get that. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, fire up the welder. We'll do a couple tacks. Okay, what we're going to do here is we have one brace on one side of the handle tacked. Now we're going to mount the saw on that square tube, and we're going to come in and tack the other side, and then hopefully that will pinch or somewhat lightly pinch the handle between the two pieces of square tube. And then I'll reposition the camera and I'll let you take a peek at how we're going to put a little bit more, put a bracket on the upper portion of the deep cut saw. We have the two braces. We have a square tube going back across the handle, and then we have two square tubes in between the handle here. There's a flat portion on the handle, so we are now bracing the sides of the handle. Let me zoom in and let you check that level. We have the level showing that the saw is pretty much level to the welding table. What I'm going to do now, let me pan the camera back down. We now have a second square tube that's going to come out and parallel the side of the saw. I've made a bracket with clearance for the pulley of the blade here, and there is a hex nut right there. So we are going to now reposition or position this square tube to come in and screw into the hex screw here. Get this perfectly parallel and level, and then we're going to tack this into position and this bracket into position. So let's go ahead and get this all set up. I now have the bracket bolted with the hex nut to the frame of the saw. We have the square tube resting up against the back square tube, and we have the bracket mounting on the square tube where we want to tack it in place. So what I'm going to do now is get a welding clamp and come in and tack this, or clamp this into position. We're going to tack here, and then we'll make minor adjustments to the level this way with the saw. This is fairly loose, so we can slide this up and down to make sure we get a good parallel fit, and then we'll tack all of these in place and let you see what it looks like. So let me get the clamp, and we'll clamp that square tube in place. We have the other vertical bracket tacked in place now. Now I'm going to make some minor adjustments to the level position of the saw, and then we'll come in and we'll tack this bracket right here. So let me get in there and reposition the camera so you can see what I'm doing. We have the base of the saw level. We now have the vertical support level. Now we're going to come in and tack this bracket, and then we'll see how it looks, how stable it is. We have the vertical bracket tacked. We have the vertical square tube tacked in place. What I'm going to do now is let's remove the clamps, and then we will take the saw out and reposition it and see how close we can get it up to level again. I've pulled the saw out of the bracket. Now I'm going to reposition it in. I don't have a paint marker handy, so I took a felt tip marker and I marked a spot on the handle of the deep cut saw, so I know approximately where to place the saw up against the bottom square tube. So let's go ahead and try that out. Let's rotate the level to 90 degrees. And again, you're probably not going to be able to see that, but both the cutting plane of the saw and the vertical position of the saw are pretty much level now. Let's give it a good jiggle. Oh, I like that. That's nice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fully weld the brackets here in the square tubes. Normally what I do is I will eventually extend this piece out more and then put a piece of flat plate with a slit cut in it for the blade. But I don't have any 1/8 inch or even 1/4 inch square plate here with me, and where back home where I get it, they plasma cut it in 12-inch square pieces, and I can get either 1/8 or 1/4 or 1/2 or whatever, and they're fairly reasonable in price. But up here, there's no place to get that, and so what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and fully weld the stand. I'm going to use the stand for the time being until I can bring back up a steel plate. Off camera, I flap wheeled the bracket, took a carbide burr, cleaned up the welds, and then we wiped it down with acetone, and then we sprayed it with Rust-Oleum Professional here. Let me show you with the tape measure these measurements, so in case you want to do yours yourself. Okay, the back bracket is 8 inches. Now this is 1 inch by 1 inch square tube. The longest bracket on the right is 5.5 inches. This bracket, or this piece of square tube, is 3.5 inches. And this tube, or this square tube, is about 5 3/4. And how they're spaced, I'll show you that here in a minute. Now let's take a look at how I made this this bracket for the vertical mount here. I basically took a piece of 1 inch by 1 inch angle plate, and I took a jigsaw and cut out some relief here, and then took the flap wheel and beveled that really nice, rounded it out, so that when the wheel that holds or turns the blade will then clear that. So let's go ahead and show you how you would mount this. Let me back the camera up a little bit. Let's fit the saw into the stand. I put a little mark on the handle portion here, and that's how far I will stick it out. So let's go ahead and put this in. The stand is a little tight, which is good. And then we want to line up the hole in the bracket. Let's check the level. Level looks pretty good. So we'll seat that down. You want this stand to be not real tight, but snug to hold the handle of the saw in. Okay, so that's pretty level. So let's now get the Allen wrench and the hex head bolt, and let's put that in. Okay, double check. Not too bad. Within a half a bubble. So there's your stand. Normally I'll put that on a table. Again, in the future, I don't have any 1/8 inch plate or 1/4 inch plate here. What I'll do is next time I run back to my mother house, I will pick up a plate, and then we will make a bracket for this to fit on here. But as you can see, it mounts pretty nice. It's pretty stable. This sitting on the welding table, there's some gaps in here, so it is going to jiggle around a little bit, but that's the stand. Now if you don't happen to have a welder handy, what you can do is take your 1 inch tube, get yourself a piece of, I'll be right back, let me get this. Get yourself a piece of 1 inch by 1 inch angle iron, cut a strip about 1 inch wide, and then you can take and you can bolt these square tube pieces to the rear bracket. Bolt them in, and you'll have your stand without having to have a welder. So here it is so far. I'm going to go ahead and mount a blade. We're going to do some testing. I'll do that off camera. Any issues, I'll let you know, but I hope you enjoyed this project. Please feel free to subscribe, and any comments, please leave them in the comments. If you have any other ideas for any other modifications, just let me know in the comments section, and we'll see you next time.